Hey everyone, how's it going? Yeah, we are going to continue along. In my time, it's been a while since I've recorded one of these, so it took me a little bit of time to remember exactly where we were rather. Um, yeah, so what we're going to be doing is making these flaps here. We're going to be making this bracket that connects from the center of this piece, and then it also is what simultaneously is housing this ribbon. So we're just going to be doing these top pieces today. I want to say to myself that this is going to be a quicker part, but every single time I say that, it turns out to be the exact same amount of time as everything else. But I think if there was ever going to be one that actually was a bit of a quicker part, it would probably be this one. I feel pretty confident that everything that we're going to be making is going to be pretty quick. This is one of those times where this 3D model is doing a really good job of representing things. So we literally only have to make one of these guys and one of these guys. Then we can duplicate them over. This middle piece should not take super long. And the ribbon is, yeah, just a ribbon. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into it. No more beating around the bush on this guy. I think, well, let's try and figure out what the best starting one would be. Let's go ahead and say that these side flaps would probably be the best place to start. This is actually a really good view to sort of see what's going on, but essentially it's kind of like this bracket is clipped down. There's a piece that goes up and extends over with metal plating on both sides. We have a metal tube around it, and then this piece here has these two cylindrical pieces that the metal tube is slotting through so it can rotate. And then it's just bolted in, yeah. So pretty basic. Let's start with the connection pieces themselves. So yeah, we have plenty of space to work with here. I'm just going to roughly block in this guy so we know exactly how much space we have to work with. Let's go ahead and just snap a cube in there. Let's say we know it's going to go roughly this far down. It's wider than it is tall, which means it's roughly I think that's a bit much. It's roughly give or take something along these lines. Something like that. Let me just get that a little bit more accurate. Let's just assume it's that size and we'll go from there. So I'm going to leave this here for now and we can duplicate it. Let's start blocking this guy in. So square is kind of the perfect shape for this. It's already mostly squared off to begin with. And right in the last part we added this lip so we have something to sort of round it off onto. It's pretty thin, so we'll skinny that guy out. We can even move the pivot to the end so we can snap it to be flush. Let's get this guy closer. This end is tucked in a bit more. The top is a bit lower. The whole thing's a bit smaller in general. But it goes to the end. Just trying to mimic the shape as best as I can. It is definitely rounded a little bit, but mostly along these lines. Yep, I just want to see it from that top view again. So yeah, it's just kind of resting up, and now we have this sort of like rounded piece that connects through. So let's try our best to set that up. I'm going to start by adding a cut in here. And what I want to do is snap it to be flush with this. And the reason for that is I'm going to have an actual cylinder like wrapping through here. Let me try and think of the best way to do that. We're going to need a cylinder to begin with. Currently has 20 sides. Let's just make it a bit easier to work with and go with like 16. Rotate it 90 degrees. And if you don't really understand what I'm doing right now, it'll make a lot more sense in just a second. I'm going to snap it so it's the same length as the piece we're working on. Skinny it out quite a bit. And we're trying to kind of just line it up. Goes up, turns into this rounded piece. Something along these lines. But this is, of course, a lot skinnier. So it takes up 1, 2, 3 of the faces. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. But yeah, let's make sure this is all lined up properly. I'm going to move the pivot of the object to this vertice right here, and we can just snap that onto this guy, which means we can kind of go ahead and delete some of these faces here. We're going to be merging them. So what's the best way to merge all of this? It's definitely a bit more of a tricky one. This side is really easy. All we really have to do for this side is go into our cut tool and just trace this out like we've done before. We can then yeah, just go into our vertex tool. Very typical vertex snapping. For this last one, I'm going to, I suppose no one would really notice if I just snapped that forward. Besides, ZBrush is going to round it out anyways. And then if we were to combine these two, I guess we have to delete that face as well. But if we were to combine these two, merge the verts, snap that guy down, merge again. These two aren't actually on top of each other. Let's make sure we have that set up. And now we can just, weird, is there another vert that isn't on top of itself? That's closed, and that's closed, and that's closed. It still wants to circle all the way through along the bottom, huh? Well, let's try and fix this side, and then we'll figure out exactly why that is. To do this, we can just extrude these guys back. Sort of stitch them up piece by piece. So we can snap this guy here, this guy here, this guy here, this guy here. Stitch that there. Suppose this would be better if it was about halfway through. So I'm going to add a cut for this to stitch onto. Can merge the verts on that, and then Snap that off to the side. Merge all those guys, and now we should be able to... very weird. Is it because this is one continuous edge? Okay, that makes sense. So, yeah, if I highlight this edge, it is one edge on top of a different edge. Like, I could bring that down and we can see the issue. So let's weld that up. And now we should be able to, yeah. Cool. Let's clean this up where we can. Can move that over to round it out a bit. Can hit it with an auto smooth. It's definitely a tricky shape to get right. I'm not super satisfied with that. I think if I take these two and harden them, it's better, but we don't really want that necessarily. We're just trying to get this piece to go up and round out. So I think what might be better is to what if we filled hole here? Get rid of all these extra edges we really don't need. We can honestly just extrude this up, extrude this over, have it be relatively squared off. And we could just hit it with a bevel like that. It gets it rounded off. It pretty much gives us the look we're going for. Just gonna make sure that there's none of this weirdness going on here. Merge those guys. Yeah, and that's just infinitely easier to do. Let's focus on the shape again, where this is just beveled a little bit and softened up. This side is softened up quite a bit. Cool, and it even looks like something like extends up from each end, so we don't really have to worry about exactly how precise it is. What I do want to do though is, the reason we set this up this way was to have some kind of piece that hangs around, and I want to set that up kind of like it fully enveloping the shape itself, and then we can just snap these edges. Okay, that's pretty much the shape I want. Let's go ahead and get these bolts in here before we get too far. Tighten that up just a wee bit. But yeah, the bolts, another Boolean, the first Boolean of the episode. So let's start by grabbing a cylinder. We can just isolate these pieces at this point. I'm going to poke face on this guy, just so we have a center point. And just because the shape isn't super symmetrical, I'm really not too worried about the sort of horizontal spacing being 100% accurate. So like one here. One here. Seems like there's a lot more space. Maybe this is just all around a little bit lower. Let's try that out. Pull it in a little bit. That's looking a little bit better for spacing. Do you want it to be a little bit smaller? Cool. Let's merge these two guys. Make sure they're not poking all the way through, but close to it. Freeze transforms, delete history. Typical bool difference, new boolean operation. Delete history and base objects. We can get some screws in there. Oh, these are different screws. I don't think I'm going to be using those ones. I like these rounded ones a little bit better. For something like this. Unless they're all like that? No, they're not. Okay, good. Give them a bit of randomness in the rotation. Nice, I'm really liking that shape. Cool. So now we have this part kind of sticking through, raising up. It's kind of like a holder. Kind of skinny this guy out a little bit before we can actually use him. Or maybe we don't want to use him specifically. Let's go ahead and extrude this out. And then grab these faces and extrude them up. Just creating this like upper lip where this metal piece is going to be going through. So something like that. And then it kind of seems like it's happening on this end as well, but this is extruded out a little bit more and then it happens. So let's just select these end pieces. And what we can do is use the smart duplicate face. Rotate these guys 180 and just kind of slot them onto this side. Deleting those. Should fit like a glove. Except for the middle one should be, yeah, a little bit off because it wasn't perfectly straight before. But we can merge those now. Nice. We have that shape. We need to get the cylinder going through it, which should be super easy. So create polygon primitive cylinder. shrinking that down. Snapping it to the middle. Snapping that to one end. Snapping this to the other end. So we're going to need a little bit of a gap between this and the bottom because these pieces are larger and they're wrapping around. So I'm still going to make it bigger, lower it, have a little bit of space, but it also kind of indicates that this stuff needs to be lowered a little bit. Just going into wireframe to make sure I didn't select any verts I didn't need to. But yeah, lowering it, we're getting this shape quite a bit better. Cool, so now we have to mimic this shape, then have it sort of like wrapped around this, and then we can duplicate it over. It should be pretty quick. One thing I'm starting to check and I'm kind of curious about is on this 3D model, they have these pieces bolted on here. Which is on that guy as well. Yeah, right there. Right there. It just seems like the reference I got for this didn't pick it up super well, so I didn't really realize it was there. Yeah, they definitely seem to be there though. Okay, we'll have to take care of those guys as well then. But getting back to what we were doing, let's make this shape. Let's see if that's the best reference we have for this shape, or if we can find a different one that works. Oh yeah, I found this transparent one, which was super helpful for some of these parts. But not super great for what we're looking for right now. Nothing there. Yeah, this is a different style. This is a good reference for these rolly bits though. But anyways, let's just go with the reference that we do have set up of these guys. Once again, I'm just going to start this with a cube. It's just going to be a series of extrudes and weird warps. But if I make this guy thin enough, I should get the job done. More or less, we are going to start by snapping each end to the inside so it's snug in there. Just so we know it's symmetrical on both sides. Let's shrink this down a little bit. Seems to curve in and out, stick out. Pretty simple shape. Scale it in a little bit. So let's have it super low. Snap it to the center of this guy. Center of the pivot first. The reason I'm doing this is so that when we have this cylinder piece sticking out, it's like able to perfectly wrap around. Just want to make sure we have that set up already before we dive into the shape. Let's extrude this guy up a bit. Grab these verts and start to pull it in pretty harshly. Extrude up. Slow it down quite a bit. Extrude up, mostly straight. Extrude up again. With it now slowly tapering out. Extrude up again, where we can just actually grab that edge and hit bevel. we kind of got that. We'll obviously be massaging that out a little bit. We can go ahead and do that right now. Something along those lines, and then we have this part, which is pretty straightforward. Literally pretty straightforward. It's just kind of like a tapered off piece. I'm going to move the pivot to the top and snap it here. Pull it out, and then kind of scale it. Grab these ends here, really round them out. This is much more of a circular round, while ours is like kind of squared, so I'm still gonna shrink it a little bit more. And this part is round here, while ours is very squared off. So let's bevel that guy as well. This is also a much more intense dip, so I'm going to really increase the intensity on that. This kind of feels like it's higher up. I think that's what the problem is. If I increase all of that up a little bit, it should seem better. One thing I want to do is go to Renderer, hit the square for more options, and go to Screen Space, Ambient Occlusion. It's enabled, but I want to kind of reduce the radius and increase the intensity, just to sort of be able to see the silhouette of this guy, even with wireframe off, a little bit clearer. So it seems to be matching this shape pretty well overall. I might want to increase that. Excuse me. I might want to move the pivot to the bottom so it stays in position, but raise the height a little bit to make it a bit bigger overall. But I think that'll do it more or less for the shape. I can even extend that to be a little bit further out. I will have it leaning back slightly when everything's set into position, because right now we have to add these little cylinder pieces that it's going to go through and attach directly onto this guy with. So that should be pretty quick and easy. We can actually just duplicate this guy, center it, scale it down a little bit, scale it up, and then let's go ahead and snap the vertices to the end of this guy so it's flush. We'll try and get it into two pieces by adding a cut to the middle, beveling it, and this bevel is going to determine how much space we want cut out, so about a third, maybe a bit more, like 0.45. Go ahead and delete the end pieces there. Fill hole. And let's just isolate these guys for a second because we're gonna want to turn it into a tube. I'm gonna select everything and deselect the edges around it. You can hit Control E and do an offset, something along these lines, and then we can kind of delete everything else. Seems like something went wrong here. I think when I extruded, I inverted the extrusion. Let me try that again. Control E, offset 0.01. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, so that's a lot better. It seemed to, yeah, like I've inverted the extrusion on itself. I'm just going to bridge these guys across. And we can select all these faces in here to scale down so it's a tighter fit. And now we can work on attaching these guys together. So let's put wireframe back on and see where this guy kind of connects somewhere along here. Seems like we can cut out a decent amount of these faces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Can delete those guys. We can add in cuts to the appropriate locations. Interesting. For some reason, this is... Oh, it's because it's angled. Add these in where the cuts are. So essentially, if I pull this back, we have an open face overlaying with these open faces. So what I'm going to do here is just trace pretty much and then we can just snap like we've done before. And that just sort of naturally goes in. We have this overlap here. Can accommodate for that. Actually, instead of doing that, let's see. So we have a little issue here where this is overlapping with this spot here. Which means I think what I'm going to do for this, just to super simplify everything, is just kind of go for a Boolean. I want to undelete those faces. I think we can just pull off a Boolean for these guys, and hopefully that works. If we freeze, transform, delete history, we can go click, shift click, union, new Boolean operation, clean up, delete history base objects, and it should merge everything so that it's mostly in place. There's going to be some cleanup for sure, but it's definitely probably going to be faster than how we had it set up before. So I'm just merging these vertices with a vertex snap over to the sides. Pull that guy away for a little bit of breathing room. This stuff, yeah, it's merged. Let's move this. I'm just going to give it something to connect to so it's not just going to freak out. Okay, I also want to pull this center one off a little bit. And then I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of cleanup here. Seems to be a lot better on this side, actually. Cool. So that's that whole part. We can go ahead and select all of it, hit Control G. Control duplicate, so Control D to duplicate that group. And scale that group -1 to flip it over. Let's go ahead and give these guys a bit of a different rotation. And then, like I said, I kind of want to rotate these, and I want them to be a little bit different on each of them. So I'm glad I didn't do this part yet. Let's move the pivot to the center of the cylinder everything's wrapped around. That way we're kind of like naturally rotating around it. This is the cylinder I was talking about. We can just sort of have it leaning back a little bit. How I would imagine it would actually be. Let's do the same on this side. Like I said, we could have done this before duplicating it over, but this way just ensures that it's a little bit different on both sides, just how it would be. We can maybe have this one leaning a lot further back and actually like touching it. That kind of imperfection is what we're going for. With those done, let's go ahead and save just to make sure we have our progress sort of locked down. Okay, and I want to give these guys a different color so we can start to separate these things a little bit better. Let's just give like the wing and the bracket like a blue, yellow. Let's make it yellow. There's like no particular reason, but there's just more yellow things around to sort of have it blend in with. The next thing I want to do, which would probably be really, really quick, is these guys here. We'll save the biggest spectacle piece for the very end. These guys, we did find another reference that had a good angle on them. I should have copied it while I had the chance, but let's see if we can find it again. Right here. So yeah, more or less exactly how it is in the 3D one that we have here. This is actually a really good reference for it. Super simple shape, being bolted down, sort of housing this rotating piece. Yeah, pretty easy to put together. Let's go ahead and do that. So it seems to be right about here, which is good. Let's go ahead and use this cube. I'm really happy I put this here. It's getting a lot of use. Seems to be skinny, going through the middle, then has a bit of a pattern since it is widening to allow screws to puncture it. So let's thin this out. All these pieces are relatively thin. Let's raise this up. And it seems that it goes up into the wing piece. So I'm just going to leave the top as it is for now. It's a tapering piece from what I can tell. It seems to get wider as we go down. Then I'm just going to set up these extrusions like so, because it does get quite a bit wider to allow for bolts to sort of puncture it. So I'm starting with this kind of shape. Bringing it all down so it's a bit wider. Mimicking what's going on here. We have these very round pieces for the screws to go through. These are all beveled as well. Kind of very wishy-washy looking shape. And then the bottom is much more tapered off like so. Probably don't even have to bevel that. It's round enough as it is. I don't want this to be perfect, so I want to bulge it out a little bit like that. And then the top, let's sort of bring it in for now, just so it's a little less crazy to look at. Let's see if we can position this a bit better. Kind of want to fatten it all up. And we can go ahead and optimize this a little bit. There's a lot of vertices just sort of hanging around that we don't really need. Just merge all of these. So put those guys together, merge vertices. I can then grab this face, merge to center. In fact, I could probably just grab all of these faces and merge to center. I hit G just to repeat last command. Let's connect these pieces here. Let's just square everything off and then get rid of the faces in the middle. This one didn't really work out, did it? Something like that. Something like not that. I hope you guys can tell what I'm doing. I'm just trying to square everything off so that we can delete those guys. Just hitting Control Backspace and we can click or slot in our screws rather. Once again, I want this to be a bit more bulgy. I even feel like soft select would be good for this. It's like I'm just hitting B and then holding B and middle mouse clicking and dragging. I can change the radius of this. Something like that. B to turn it off. Make sure it's still centered, and let's go ahead and start cutting into this guy. I want to shrink him back a little bit. We can select this face. I'm just going to use my plugins here to get a cylinder on there really quick. So we're gonna kind of mimic the roundness we're seeing here. So one there, and then if I put an edge here, I'm just connecting the two. I can move the pivot to that. Freeze, transform, delete history. Mirror along X. Now we have 2. And I can delete this since we no longer need it. And we can go ahead and do our standard Boolean. Freezing transforms and deleting history, of course, first. Let's push this through a little bit. New Boolean operation. I don't want it to go all the way through because we won't be able to see it either way. So I might as well just keep it intact. Cleanup, delete history and base objects. Go ahead and poke these two faces so that we can just easily snap a screw into there. And now we need to worry about the top part. So the top part mostly just seems like it goes up, it opens up, it has this sort of wheelie thing going through. And these little things that the wheel is resting on is clamped back down to the base and foundation of this. So that should be relatively simple to make. The way that this 3D model has it set up, I really like, where it kind of goes a bit wider. And they have it resting against the pieces we just made. Now in this case, that means we would have to raise this higher because it's just too far away. But let's give it a shot. I'm going to extrude this up. Bring it out, extrude up again, and bring in. Now, none of this is very exact, but that's all right. Tighten that up a little bit. And then it has, if we select both of these faces, selected the back as well, we can bring this in, delete them. That was just an extrusion that I did to cut this out. And then, of course, bridge it back through. This is starting to make me feel like I need to make it a lot thicker. I can bring these guys forward. Nice. Bring this in. Kind of want to take the top and taper like that. I think that's a more interesting look. But let's get this wheel piece in. It kind of just seems like we can do that pretty easily with a cylinder. Rotate that 90 degrees. Skinny it out. Just as a point of reference for the center, I'm going to poke face on this guy. And then we'll have to do the same on this side, so we know how high up to put it. Kind of want to scale these guys more like so. And this just kind of seems like some sort of rolly bracket. So I'm going to skinny this up. It's just going to be a series of cuts and extrusions. So let's start by adding a cut, beveling it, extruding the thickness, and then doing a bit of a scale in to get a different shape. You can, of course, pull that back in. It's a bit crazy. Let's do shift period to grow selection and widen that out. Let's grab all of these faces on the ends here. Extrude, bring it in, Control E and extrude, and add some thickness. Kind of playing with the shape a little bit here. And then let's punch a hole through it all. Kind of don't like how extreme that slope is. Yeah, let's punch a hole through it all. Easiest way to do that is just select these faces, hit Control E, change your scale tool, scale that down, delete that, and then like we've done before, select the edge loops on either side. Bridge seems like it doesn't want to do that properly, or it's twisting, which we can fix by just bridging one side and then afterwards selecting everything and bridging it so it has something to go off of. We are cutting through here. It's okay though, because we're going to have to pull this forward anyways. The reason we have to pull it forward is because where this connects, it has to attach to the front here. I'm going to scale this down quite a bit. In fact, I'm going to scale the whole thing down. Let's go ahead and bring this in quite a bit. Still want these parts to be a bit wider because a piece is going to be attached onto it. Let's bring it in almost like that. We have to stick a cylinder through there. We could even just, it would look a little bit more normal if we just did something like that, honestly. Maybe don't taper it as much. But yeah, let's just borrow this cylinder. Snap it horizontally, snap it vertically, snap it to the middle. And first we have to center the pivot. Snap that guy to the middle. Scale it, and then it's like attached, like pulled back and attached onto there. I do want to get this resting closer though. Okay. Let's have this snap to the end. I want this to essentially connect. I want it to actually be welded. There's no real easy way to do that other than to take these pieces and straighten them out, snap it to the top, take these pieces, straighten them out, snap it to the bottom. The reason I don't want to do that is because it kind of messes up this transition. Like I can still manually go in here and scale these out, but it's not going to be perfect anymore. It's just a little bit of a nuisance, but it's probably worth it in the end, so I should just go for it. Yeah, let's isolate these two guys. Delete these faces here. Add cuts here. I'm doing this so that we have like a super smooth place to sort of extrude back from where I know it's even. Let's select all the faces on this side. And if we extrude back and scale this down, it should line up perfectly. I guess this isn't flush. This would have to be flat. Yeah, this is where it's messing everything up a little bit. Flattening out these pieces kind of messes with the whole tapering idea. But in general, I think it's worth it. If we extrude this back. Delete those faces. Is there no face? Did I delete those? No, I didn't. Just want to make sure there's no faces that are invisible and hidden like these guys. So now we should be able to merge these two really easily. Mesh, combine. Merge the vertices. These should act as one once we, yeah, merge these guys down. Okay, let's do the other side. Cool. Do the other side. It's quite a bit of cleanup we can do on this guy. Just like every time we end up doing this, there's not too much I can really comment on. And the final side. I guess we can affect the taper now that we have these ends. Yeah, something happened to make this not symmetrical. Which kind of makes me just want to cut the whole thing in half, to be honest. If I go to my front view, isolate the object, I can hold shift and just cut. And if I get it pretty close to the middle, I'll just take it. So like I cut pretty close to the center. I'm just going to delete this half. And go into vertice mode and just merge those guys. I can then focus on just cleaning up this one half here and then duplicate it over. So grabbing those edges and pulling them over. We have this whole sort of ring that we don't need. Okay, what else? Suppose we could pull these guys up and down since we don't need them anymore. Just saving on geo wherever we can, really. And yes, I know this is quite a lot, but I'm saying in the sense of saving us cleanup that we're going to have to do later. we're gonna have to go through everything anyways, and deleting some of these edge loops isn't really worth all the hassle, just because there's a small chance that in ZBrush we'll need to add more edges anyways. So I'm moving the pivot back to the middle here, freezing transforms, deleting history, and mirroring along X. Merging verts. We can then select this edge that runs all the way through, control backspace, and it's a little bit off. You can tell because the bolts aren't lined up. Let's recenter it a bit. Scoop this guy. Scoop this guy. We can delete this middle reference. And that should do it for this one. Looks pretty similar to that. Let's have this a little bit lower. I just want to sort of tuck it all in a little bit more where I can. That's a little bit silly. Let's leave the outside and then just kind of grab the mid section. I suppose we have to grab these pieces as well. Okay, looking good. Now we can probably skinny this up without it looking super weird. This whole shape is looking kind of weird. I think a lot of it has to do with just the nature of everything here. Bizarre. Let's widen this up. It's a little off reference, but I think that I'm just more comfortable with how that shape looks overall. Looks more secure that way too. Okay, cool. Let's give this guy a yellow color. No, give him blue to stand out. You don't have to bevel that. ZBrush will take care of it. What we do have to do is put this all in a group. Control D to duplicate the group, and then in scale, -1 along X. To flip it over. And now we have 2 of them. It's really filling in. I feel like this part is definitely not shorter in any way whatsoever. Kind of predicted that, but it is what it is right now. Can I? Yeah, I'm going to leave it the way it is for now, because we still have this middle piece. This middle piece is definitely the most complicated. Let's see how long we've been recording for. We've been recording for over an hour. Part of me wants to say just screw it and like let's go for that. My other part is saying I should take a break and really think about how it's constructed so I can do it more quickly and efficiently. And probably tack on a few smaller things I believe there was a piece here that we didn't really do. That thing right there. It's not on this side, but that guy. Let's do that instead. Let's save this middle piece with the ribbon. And that piece there for the next part. Call it a part here. And we'll move on. Cool, guys. Thank you for watching. Yeah, those took longer than I expected. But they're looking good. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next part of the tutorial. See ya.